right, why don't we get started? Thank you for joining us today, Graphically Speaking. This is our webinar on e-commerce development trends of 2026. And I don't know if anyone here has attended last week. We did e-commerce design trends for 2026. So now I want to go into some of the details of architecture. We're going to really discuss platforms, focus on platforms, and it's going to be acronym crazy. And I'm going to have to go pretty quick. There's a lot of material to get through. So without further ado, let's go. What we'll cover today is 12 e-commerce development trends that are appearing for 2026. This is already things that are starting to happen in 25, even 24, but are really coming through in 26. We've got platform-driven performance and growth, focus on SEO, AI is huge, and accessibility on the architecture itself. We're going to do conversion-focused engineering and what that means. And this is intended for mid-sized e-commerce teams. So to understand why this matters, we need to talk about the platforms. The platforms do shape the outcomes, right? This content management system chooses how you've got ceilings and you've got floors and how far you can move. We look at these platforms and how their defaults influence the SEO and the core web vitals. This is Google's manner of ranking performance. We look at accessibility and how it varies by themes. We study how conversion is impacted by the CMS and how flexible it is. And so we're looking for is development trends that follow the platform evolution, because a lot of these platforms are doing this research, before we get to it. So they're adjusting their platforms as we go. So let's look at the content management systems we're going to deal with. Today, we're going to look at how Shopify, Shopify Plus, the Magento open source, WooCommerce on WordPress, and Adobe Commerce react. But before we get into these trends, let's define what modern e-commerce development means. First, LCP. Largest contentful paint, right? This is on our core web vitals reporting. AI readability structure so that the AI tool sets can read. We're going to look at WCAG compliant models. We're going to look at how SEO is safe by the default CMS tool sets. And we're going to look at conversion paths and how they're to be engineered and not assumed. Out of the box conversion paths rarely work. Starts with performance, right? I've mentioned core web vitals. So the first trend, performance as a platform constraint. It's, in my opinion, not really a trend as much as it's really a light bulb moment, right? We're looking at platform constraints, abilities, ceilings, and floors. That's why I got a little plan of a floor there. But it helps determine how the speed of the site is going to react. Hosting, and rendering matter more than code polish, right? So clean hosting, clean platforms. The core web vitals, they limit different by the content management system themselves. They say mobile performance is the benchmark, and it really is for the majority of sites that we see. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And how the platform, your choice in the platform will set your performance foundations, but it should also set your expectations. You can see that with the core web vitals themselves, right? This is the tool set that identifies exactly how the performance of the site is working, right? With Shopify, it has a strong LCP. LCP, largest contentful paint, right? CLS, the cumulative layout shift, how fast it takes to get to the next piece. With Shopify, there are some risk in the apps. And we're going to get into apps and how they're being treated in 26. Shopify Plus has the same LCP baseline. It is have higher risk if you're doing complex setups, APIs, etc., if it's unmanaged. WooCommerce, very hosting dependent. Magento, it's very powerful, but if any of you've worked with Magento, it's very powerful, but it's easy to overload and slow down, right? So we often have Magento open source sites that have grown over the years, and now their core web vitals are showing poor results, right? Adobe Commerce, very powerful, very scalable, but it's also very complex. So with these content management tools and Core Web Vitals in mind, we look at why rendering strategy is trending, right? That's number two. What is rendering on the page? Are we doing server first and hybrid rendering? Or are we just doing server first? The SSR basically means server side. There's the CSR, the client side, SSG. We won't get into those other ones, but SSR and CSR are important. SSR, the server side rendering, is favored for SEO and AI, right? It's very complete. It's simple to crawl. It's systematic in its methodology, so it's easy to understand. It has the ability to show the initial content real quick, so the visibility is there. It has less, dependencies on JavaScript, and as I mentioned, has better crawl efficiency. So each of these platforms, they vary. With Shopify, we've got Liquid plus SSR, Shopify plus Liquid SSR, and we're going to do complex integrations, like if you're doing headless, that's where Hydrogen comes in. WooCommerce is PHP, as we know. SSR is native to its PHP plat. And then Magento, SSR is possible, but again, it's manually, everything about Magento is going to be manually handled. So you're going to need to get manually involved with that. Adobe Commerce is very flexible, very powerful, and it has very complex SSR and management between the two. So hybrid between SSR and your client side is going to be one of the best ways to go ahead and think about how your content is going to be rendered in front of a client side. Pure client side rendering, where the page shows up and every time and it's basically stored in the cookie or stored in memory in the cache. Those things are going away in 26. So trend number 3, AI readability. AIO is the artificial intelligence optimization, right? Large language models. GEO architecture, this is your chat GPTs, perplexities, Grok, etc. Right? So how are these tool sets reading your site? They're focused on semantic HTML, right? They're looking for a methodology to your page layouts, the structure within the page templates themselves. They're looking for a predictability, right? They're looking to see what they assume should be there. They want to understand if there's a clear intent on the page, and they'll rank you accordingly. And if there's interlinking, so linking within a site is now very popular. It's making a huge comeback. It's very popular in SEO. So they're looking at how logical interlinking happens within the site. The platforms themselves, they should show just a clean markup wherever possible. And bottom line, AIO, it's not replacing the SEO. It's just really expanding on it. It's making it better. So AI discoverability, what does that look like by the platform themselves, right? Shopify's got clean HTML, it's limited control, and you're going to hear me talk about Shopify's goalposts a bit. Shopify Plus, again, clean HTML, has more flexibility via the integrations, but governance is required. Governance really just means rules, right? More rules. There has to be rules, right? So it has to have a manual intervention of understanding what you're allowed to do and what you shouldn't do. WooCommerce, very strong content abilities. Remember, its origins was, a blog provider. It has schema options to it, but it's going to require governance. Magento, very powerful schema markup, but it is development dependent, right? It is a bit of a beast, so it takes somebody with skills and experience. Adobe Commerce, very advanced, very manual, but also extraordinarily powerful, right? Same principles apply to SEO, right? That's trend number 4. Are we developing with SEO in mind first? Are we selecting a platform with an SEO first strategy, or should it be, or second? Where does SEO fit in the initial stages of development, right? If you're looking at templates for any of the platforms, we need to have SEO availability within the templates itself, right? This again helps crawl efficiently for the AI tool sets. The platform itself will have quirks. You work those out through staging, figure out exactly what's happening on page rendering, how pages are being crawled all the way through. And you want to avoid having your technical debt. That's your technical stack, how much effort you put into additional plugins and specific unique tool sets for your target audience. How much debt does that have in the Core Web Vitals? And plugin only responsibility. So setting it and forgetting it with an SEO plugin, that's not going to work. It just simply doesn't adjust. Right. So each one of these tool sets, or sorry, CMSs, is going to reply differently with these performance platforms. Right. Shopify is going to have strong defaults, limited edge cases. Again, limited because there's goalposts. Shopify Plus, really strong defaults again, and it scales, considerably with all of the multi-store international currencies, unique catalogs, catalog grouping, that sort of thing. So it does have a good scalable architecture, again, within the goalposts of Shopify. WooCommerce, extraordinarily flexible, right? But it's easy to break. Magento, also very powerful, back to requiring expertise, skill sets, because you're going to manually be working that in. And with Commerce from Adobe, you've got an enterprise level SEO control. You can fine tune every aspect of your long tail, your keywords. This is geo reaching very specifically, right? These types of SEO strength also similar to the accessibility, which is my next trend. Trend 5, WCAG as development standard, right? WCAG is our Web Content Accessibility Guidelines. This is a 2026 kind of mandate by many governing bodies, and it's something you should be considered about, especially if you are looking at US markets, if you're selling or marketing to the US, right? There's, 3 different levels of WCAG, A1, A2, A3. A1's minimum, it's not going to pass much. A2 is where we're going to focus on because that's where the majority of e-commerce, both B2B, B2C, is going to end up. Those are the requirements needed. This is the WCAG 2.2. And then I won't even bother with 3A because that's not even obtainable. And it's mostly for governments and such, right? Retrofitting your site after for accessibility is not impossible. It's just costly. It's expensive. It can mean little things like your shopping cart doesn't have the proper tags across, right? Doesn't mean shopping cart, it's just an icon, right? And each one of these platforms, which we'll discuss, they vary in how they address accessibility. The last thing I'll just quickly mention with WCAG is even though it's a necessary evil in some cases, in some people's eyes, it actually can improve your UX and SEO because a lot of the AI and SEO crawling is going to match their requirements as accessibility would, right? So as a platform, the 5 different platforms, how they deal with accessibility. Shopify is theme dependent. So selecting the correct theme. I mentioned selecting SEO first, right? If you're developing in Shopify, selecting a theme for SEO, look at it from an accessibility perspective as well, right? Shopify Plus, there's more customizations. There is risk if you're, again, not keeping within the goalpost, if you're breaking the goalposts of Shopify Plus, if you're pushing the envelope. But it needs to be, it has more flexibility than Shopify. WooCommerce, the theme is important. And because none of these platforms will perform to your standards without plugins, you're really looking at the plugin quality because that'll be a critical component for accessibility. On Magento, very strong platform, but it's basic and it needs to be built up, right? Again, through technical expertise, a developer. And Adobe Commerce, enterprise grade. It's complex, but it's incredibly powerful out of the box with its UI tools, etc. It's amazing. But starting off with accessibility, and SEO, this starts with clean markup. So AI and accessibility and all of these tools, they are benefited by a proper markup on the site. So semantic HTML is what everybody's looking for. And when I say everybody, I do include the AI tools. So semantic, as you see on the right here, a little image, everything's broken up. You got header, you got nav, you got articles, figures, you got things on the side, CTAs, etc. So it's all really clear, right? In the left side, it's a div soup. It's just div, div, div. It's crazy. And this is often what we see, and often historically how sites were built to accommodate personalization or unique offerings from companies. But it's going to be taxed further and further. You're going to be penalized about it. So you're looking for native elements. You're looking for ERIA to be used intentionally, and that's the ability for accessible, rich internet applications. You want the clean structure to the site, headings, H1s, H2s, etc. All your forms and modals need to be visible. And again, we're going to talk about how that works on mobile, but those need to be reviewed, how they're accessible. And in general, these content management systems, they don't really enforce this. There are some goalposts, in some of the platforms, and you're going to see more of that within each platform. But generally speaking, this is up to you. Good governance. Trend 6, modular component-based builds. Again, back to that semantic. We want to use reusable UI components. These are things that you can place within a template and multi-use it across the site. You want to use the logic from that within your templates. You don't want these individual orphan templates, specials that are unique. You want to limit that amount of individual templates. This allows for faster iteration. The entire site loads faster. Everything is remembered quickly. Crawlers, both AI prompts and SEO crawl bots are going to find and quickly identify where these things are at because they've got a standard from which they're looking at. They're looking at a template. Oh, that's a similar template, that component, that block, that slice. These are all available within the other pages of the site, right? This does allow for WCAG compliance to be easier for you to obtain. And again, this is supported differently by different platforms, right? So for Shopify, we've got sections and blocks you're familiar with. Shopify Plus, same thing, but more advanced, right? You have more advanced slices with individual blocks, dynamic, static, etc. Here again goes governance. So you're going to hear me mention governance, I think, a fair bit, right? WooCommerce, Gutenberg Page Builder, you've got custom components. You can build like crazy on that. Magento, its UI components are really, really good out of the box. A lot of configuration around them to make them, to tweak them to precisely how you want them to respond, but very powerful. And then Adobe Commerce, very scalable, very powerful, again, very complex, right? So this only works if your development is CMS friendly, if you're looking at SEO and accessibility in the CMS friendly manner. You're going to have your team that you're going to be working with on that. Trend number 7, back to content management systems and being friendly in their development. So again, I was just mentioning, having a team that is responsible for your site. Are they available for the type of site that you've selected, the type of content management system, right? You need marketers who are accessing the site for specials, for merchandising, for email marketing, etc. They need to work in that environment safely. But it needs to have guardrails. Those guardrails are created by developers based on the foundations of that CMS. The content updates, they shouldn't be major deploys, like site uploads in the middle of the night, trying to get everything going. These are block inserts. These are quick updates on the fly. If they're API driven, they should have those kind of fail safes. So it's not bringing down the entire listing page, for example, but a strict subcategory perhaps, right? The platform itself has the native tooling for the development. So if there's WYSIWYG within the CMS, try to deploy those tool sets that are native to that system. You may need to add others for more advanced content management, but be very careful about that, right? All of this brings you into the ability to get faster response of content to your target audiences when they want it on demand, right? Which equals higher revenue. Basically, the flexibility, it varies by platform, right, on how CMS friendly everything is. Shopify, fastest updates, least control. I got a little goalpost there, hockey fan. So really quick, it's always up to date. It's very clean, very fresh, very accessible, very crawler friendly, but it has some significant goalpost controls, right? Shopify Plus, it has fast updates as well. It has more extensibility and automation, and it has things like multi-store, multi-currency, has also the goalposts, but they're broader, right? WooCommerce, maximum flexibility. I mean, you can do what you want. Crazy is as crazy does on WooCommerce, but more risk, as you can imagine. Magento, again, very powerful, but it's also very large, right? So it has iteration speed issues that you have to identify. Your core web vitals will show you this right during your early stages of development. Keep checking those core web vitals. right? Adobe Commerce, very enterprise rich workflows and schema. So it's very flexible in that. Again, it's very large. So it takes training. It takes, the professionals in the room to be able to handle it, but it's very powerful, does a lot of things. So the next thing really is going to be one of the most important areas that I focus on here in my job as an account director for eCom is the checkout, right? Other than the P2P page, your product display, the checkout has to be the priority. It's a critical component. It's not considered no longer as a single page, if you got a single page checkout or a multi-step checkout as pages. The entire checkout process is now considered a module, right? So we want to look at the module as a whole, right? Checkout performance has to be prioritized all the way through from are you a guest, etc. We talk about mobile first flows. If the site can respond through checkout on mobile first, then it's easier to build the rest of the components, native components through checkout on desktop. You want to minimize your scripts for uniqueness. Try to use the functionality and tool sets within the CMS as they are. And you want to focus that whole process of checkout leading to the checkout manually. From a conversion sensitive process, you want to engineer that pathway, that journey through to checkout and beyond to the thank you. And then what? You want to engineer that manually. It's not out of the box. And they all differ by platform, as you can imagine what I'm going to throw. Shopify, it's optimized. It's an opinionated checkout. They have done their research and they continue to spend research on the best methodology for conversion on checkout. So it's a very good process. It works right out of the box excessively well. Shopify Plus, again, I have an optimized checkout. They have more flexibility for extensive checkout systems if you're dealing with B2B or you're dealing with international markets and such, trading on different sites between different cart checkouts. It's still safe. It's not fully open, so there are goalposts, so it's still safer than customizing it. WooCommerce, again with WooCommerce, crazy as crazy does, very flexible. You can make it do whatever you want. And by adding 3 different plugins in your checkout process, yeah, you can make it work the way you want it to, but it'll be bloated. It's going to affect your core web vitals. Magento has a standard UX for checkout. It's pretty standard. It follows Nielsen rating for UX. It does what's intended to do. It's just not overly wow if you have a unique checkout process that you want to offer your clients, right? It is customizable. So if you're in the checkout and you in the habit of merchandising throughout your checkout process, great, do it. It's effective, but you have to do it through a proper developer. Adobe Commerce, incredibly powerful checkout process and retention workflows and nurturing campaigns, etc. Really powerful, but complex, right? All of these providers, they're rethinking how extensions impact their platform going forward, right? So in the 26th year, we're seeing our relationships with our CMS partners show indications of a reduction in apps and extension dependencies, and for good reason, right? With apps and extension dependencies, you've got these third-party scripts. It's harder to control those, right? So you have a harder difficulty in quality control management. I got a little scale there. It shows ratings and reviews. Incredibly important to have ratings and reviews, especially if you're a B2C, but very intense scripting. It could easily affect your core web vitals, right? Lower scores. You've got improved stability, as you imagine. Most of these content management systems have a process of software upgrades or version control upgrades, patches, that sort of thing for security reasons or for functionality improvements. Some are out of the box, like Shopify as a SaaS solution. Others, Magento, are not, right? So this platform itself, each platform will have constraints to limit the amount of third-party scripting and apps that are going to be placed on it before it starts to break. And that, again, varies by platform. So Shopify, apps, they add risk, but who can run a Shopify site without apps, right? It also adds to speed. So back to checking your core web vitals continuously. right? Shopify Plus, you're going to have more apps. There's more built in the Shopify Plus. So if you can handle that native functionality, great, but you're going to run into app requirements, right? This is where governance is required. WooCommerce plugins, I mean, I've looked at sites where we do a review of their technical stack and we see the plugins within the WooCom. And we've got between WordPress and WooCommerce, we're looking at 40, 50, 80 plugins, you know, can get very intense. Not only can it break the site, performance-wise, it's going to be a bit of a slug. Magento OS extensions are very powerful, but dangerous because they overlap, right? You have to really look at the developer, look at the extension itself, read into what does it impact, which tables does it impact, you know, on a merchandising extension, for example. Adobe Commerce, the world is your ocean. But again, like many things, it requires governance. So you need that trained professional to guide you through those workflows. The next most important thing really is to observe, and that's my trend 10, right? To observe the activity of your site, to observe the performance, to observe your conversion rates, to observe your tag management. All of the observation tool sets that are coming need to be really addressed. It's no longer, well, I think it should do this, or I think I'd like to have this. Look at the data, right? Look at your core web vitals. It changes, right? An algorithm might change on Google, etc., and it may impact how the site responds. Obviously, conversion needs to be tracked. If you're not doing that already, that's a given, right? But doing so early on in your staging environments and when you're staging to live new areas of the site, right, you're going to see some errors. They surface up quickly up front, especially if you got the right monitoring tools. Most of the CMSs don't, in my opinion, have enough monitoring tools, so you need to supplement whatever they have, right? And those development decisions, as I mentioned earlier, it's not just, I like the color blue, I would like this button to be blue. It's what does the data tell us, right? So those tools that each CMS offers for, you know, observing the responses of the site, the performance of the site, they vary. Shopify has got limited native observability. Shopify Plus, the same. Also, you know, it often needs some external monitoring, just looking at it using different tool sets. WooCommerce, it's very dependent on the host and plugins. Magento has some advanced monitoring possible because you can get into the data layer. You can extract activity out of the data layer with a Magento. New Relic is a common tool set that we apply across the board for our Magento sites, and it's pretty good tool. It may not be everything you're looking for, but it's a really good start. And Adobe Commerce has very good observability. You can manage, because again, that data layer is accessible with Adobe Commerce, you know, and the BI tool sets, you can really see everything that's going on. Next is mobile, and how are we going to deal with mobile? So this is trend number 11, mobile first platform engineering. Now this is true for, I would say, a majority of initiatives across the board. It varies, my opinion varies slightly when it comes to B2B only sites, because you're going to have heavy task-orientated sessions by purchase departments, you know, during office hours. So they're going to be in front of a desktop. But initially, research, browsing, and link exchange, if I'm on the bus on the way home, or if I'm talking to somebody and they're passing over a B2B site or an industry site, I may look at it on mobile. So it still needs to respond mobile very effectively. The third least most mobile first platform engineering, if I could say it as much, even though it will be impacted by mobile, and that's client portals. If you have an extensive B2B, for example, it doesn't have to be B2B, but it's an extensive client login portal where all functionality is very heavy. It's desktop oriented because of the amount of content that you're trying to portray on the site. That's going to have less of a mobile, you know, friendly view to it, and should, because desktop is going to be the majority of user activity. But all of these sites still need to have that research ability on mobile, the browsing, the link exchange, etc. Right? We talk about the platforms themselves, you know, where they affect mobile and where they stand. Shopify has a mobile optimized themes, mobile first, very, very focused with Shopify, Shopify Plus. You can even get very complex apps for Shopify Plus that are mobile friendly, mobile first. They do add weight. It really depends on how much mobile activity or independent mobile activity we'd like to have people do. WooCommerce, obviously very theme critical. So pick a theme with mobile friendly. Start, challenge yourself. Go to a site, look at the theme first on mobile, see what it looks like. Then go look at desktop, see if it manages your expectations. Magento mobile can be very good or very bad. The widest spectrum is in Magento. And Adobe Commerce, extremely powerful for mobile first as a design SEO standard, but also heavy. I'm going to go real quick here. 10, trend 12, retention focus. This is my last trend, by the way, so we're going to wrap it up pretty quick here. Retention focused engineering. So this is a slight shift for some of you and a slight shift for me over the years. The primary goal of increasing repeat purchases. You're getting your customer loyalty, a long-term customer value is what you're focusing, rather than optimizing for first-time acquisitions, first-time buyers, or the one-offs. But simply put, that is focusing on that. It doesn't mean ignore the first-time acquisition, because it might be a B2B site or a B2C site that's making first impressions, right? You're not going to please everyone, but that's the shift, retention focusing. Saving your preferences, saving, your favorites, your purchase orders, your requisition list. What did I view last in my basket? All of these features and tool sets really help that retention focus. And then real quick here, all next, maintainability. So all of this wrapped up in how easy can I use my CMS tool, right? It has to be simple in its technical stack so I can scale it better, because you're never going to launch your site with everything that you ever want. You're going to phase things out. You have to have clear ownership models. Who is doing what, where on the site? Governance, right? Fewer custom hacks, right? Get stuff native out of the box or in a tried and true app or extension, right? Governance. Platform updates respected. So the update itself, Magento updates, they send out their critical updates or level updates, priority 1, priority 2. You got to respect that. They're doing that for a reason, to get it out there in front of you so that you can respond accordingly. You got to just long-term. Velocity has to be protected. Again, governance. This is the growth of that opportunity. The site should get faster over time as opposed to slower. Real quick, I'm not even going to go through this. This is just a snapshot of, kind of a summary, but bringing this all together, because I know we're running out of time here. To summarize, the platform shapes the development success right from the beginning of your selection. It's engineered, don't assume it. SEO and AI, they require structure. And WCAG has a silver lining. Not only do you need to do it, but it can actually help benefit you, right? I'm going to leave you with one last bonus trend. And this is our opinion, and this is to be taken at heart. The best platform is the one your team can run well. So that is it. I appreciate your patience, with me and getting this out to you guys. I hope that was useful. And if you have any questions, you can reach directly out to me. You can reach out to our info or give us a call. If there's any suggestions that you may have for any future webinars, we'd love to hear them. We're trying to stay in touch with what is not only trending, but it's very pertinent, Western Canada, Canada as a whole, or international markets. So thanks again for your time. Looking forward to the next webinar. Enjoy the day.